Hosptial, and I know that David has watched you on General Hosptial and Guiding Light, and a few of the other things that you've been on. So you're a great actor. I love all the roles that you play. I'd like to go back a little bit, though, on when you started out, actually, in the entertainment business. You started out modeling, which I was surprised. I didn't know that you did that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't, I did. I won't say unfortunately. I won't say fortunately. It just
right.
kind of, it came by a fluke, to be honest. I was in the mall back home in Chesterfield, Missouri, and they were doing a big sort of underwear thing for Structure, and that was kind of my first little taste of the industry, if you will. I was signed to a modeling agency prior to that, Talent Plus in St. Louis, and I didn't really, I was doing more, commercial stuff there in terms of like, Walmart, for instance, or like Sears, or for like JCPenney, just small things. Really, it wasn't. I wasn't going to go anywhere with it. And anyway, when this whole Structure underwear campaign took off, and I ended up finishing in the top 10 nationwide through this whole competition, I got a chance to go to LA, and we had done shows such as I can't remember, The View, and we had done RuPaul and a bunch of other talk shows. And granted, we were in our underwear and socks, and it was a little bit silly.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
yeah. Well, I'm kind of glad you did. But that was my first trip out to Los Angeles, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was in 1997. Dating myself a little bit, but and we ended up being on one of the lots. We were doing our calendar shoot that day, and they were shooting across the stage. They were shooting I Know What You Did Last Summer with Sarah Michelle and Jennifer Love and that whole group, and I got to see what a stage was like. I got to see what a studio was like, and we got to take pictures with them, and I don't know. I kind of got sort of a little churn in my stomach, a little burn, that I kind of thought maybe I could do something like that. But I never, coming from Missouri and that kind of, this being from the Midwest, that sort of, that shoebox world that we live in, you have to take a big risk and leave in order to do something, because we don't have the opportunities, obviously back east in the Midwest. I mean, a little bit more now, but because the industry has transferred a little bit. But back then, you have to be in two places and two places only, and that was, L.A. or New York, and I always felt that I was too short to model, and so I kind of took Structure for what it was worth, and did a little bit here and there, and did some Calvin Klein stuff, and so on, and after the few campaigns and few shoots I had done, I had lost my soccer career due to injury, and I decided that I was going to try the military, and that was perhaps not the best choice for me. I wasn't a fan of being in the military. I kind of went for my family's sake and to kind of gain some guidance after my father had passed, and I was lost, and so I was watching a movie called It's a Wonderful Life, and this was December 29th of 1998, and I was sitting there watching a scene where Jimmy Stewart's character was to jump over the bridge, and Clarence ends up being in the water. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, which
yes. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that hasn't.
Well, I've met a few that haven't, but
really,
oh yeah, absolutely. And there was that moment where not to sound morbid, but I felt the way that Jimmy felt at that time, having lost two of my greatest loves in my life, and being my father and my soccer career. And so I realized at that specific moment that if I could affect people the way that I was affected in that moment, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I turned to my mother. I was absolutely in tears. And I said, I'm leaving. And she says, where are you going? I said, I'm going to L.A. She says, for what? Tina Scott, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go be an actor. And so, not many people are going to jump up and say I'm going to be an actor, and I had no clue what I was doing. I've never acted a day in my life. I didn't know a soul. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I had to go, and I had to take the risk, and so I did. I packed up my little 1995 Eagle Talon, and I drove, 32 hours to Los Angeles. 9 hours later, all of my stuff was in black trash bags in the back of my car, and I got to L.A. and slept in my car in Sunset and Orange Grove, right in front of this little, this nice white two-pillared house, right there. There was 7-Eleven on the corner of the street and so forth. And that was my moment, and that was the decision I made. And so now, having been blessed enough to have a 15-year career, if you want to call it a career, here we are. So,
well, I think it's a career by now
started,
after 15 years.
Well, I mean, I look at things this way, that is that my connection or yours? Do you hear that?
Yes, I do.
The static?
Yeah, there's a little static.
Yeah. But I look at it this way, that in any walks of life, as long as you do what you love, and nothing else should matter. I don't ever want to call work. I want to be able to love what I do. And my dad used to always say, if you're going to be a garbage man, be the best garbage man you can, but do it because you love it. And that's what I've been very blessed to do. So fame, fortune, none of that matters to me. It's just being able to wake up every morning and know that I'm living a dream. And I think that everybody out there has something that they've always wanted to do, and I believe that everybody should, take that leap of faith, both in themselves and in faith in God, and know that they can do it. So, yeah.
Good advice. What was your first role?
My first role actually was it was a little movie. Well, I shouldn't say little, but it was a movie with Jim Belushi and Charles Durning. It was my first audition. I after my car got taken away, I met this agent who I'm obviously no longer with, but I met him, and he got me a few auditions, and my first audition was a movie called Justice. At the time, it was Backlash, and they had changed the name to Justice with Charles Durning and Jim Belushi, and I had I don't know, 6-7 lines in the film. I booked that, and then the next one came General Hosptial, and I did not expect to book the show, and I was blessed enough to do so. So, yeah, that was my second audition. Yeah, and then I did this little children's movie that was called Craw the Sea Monster, which I hope no one ever finds. we all start somewhere,
Right.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I see that from 1998. You played Captain Rurik.
Captain Rurik. Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes. And guess what's funny? You know who my co-star in that was?
Who?
Little Allison Lohman.
Really?
Yes. And I haven't seen Allie in probably, I don't know, 6 years or something like that. But yeah, she did. She's done a couple big movies, one with Nikolas Cage, and she's done fairly well for herself, and I'm super proud of her. And I knew that the day that I met her, I knew there was something special about her and that she would actually do something. So I'm glad to see her career, blossoming, if you will.
Right. Well, when you auditioned for General Hosptial, did you know that you were going to be playing, if you got the part, Nikolas Cassadine?
No, I actually went in and auditioned for Juan, for Michael Salcedo's character. And they had actually, if I don't want to quote myself wrong, but if I remember correctly, Mark Teschner had called my agent at the time and said, we like him, we want to test him, but we want to test him for another character. And I had no idea what the character was at the time, and obviously until, a few days prior to the test deal that it was going to be Nikolas. And the funny thing is that my mom was an avid viewer, and still is today, of General Hosptial, and I think she's not missed many episodes over the years. Let's just say that. And so,
right.
It was always pretty funny because she did kind of say that I'd always be a perfect Nikolas, and so the day came. Yeah.
Well, mother knows best.
Yeah.
It's funny because when us dedicated soap fans or even fans of a show, when they do a recast, we have such a problem with it. But there are some times when it's easy to accept that new person in a role that is a recast, which you did with Nikolas. It was such a smooth transition. I mean, we loved Tyler, but when you got in there, there was no uproar. There was nothing. You made that role your own.
Well, I thank you very much for that, because it took me a good 6 months to kind of get my head on right, and I mean, you're young and you get thrown into a show, and I think it all happens to us at one point when we're younger in our careers, that the idea of being recognized, the idea of being known for something, it does kind of play with your head a little bit, and it did very much so. I mean, I was 23, and I kind of got ahead that was, and I've always been a person that I'm very confident, and I always kind of come off a little bit more cocky to people, but it's not. My dad always was adamant about being confident, and sometimes people misconstrue the difference. And so,
right.
When I was younger and I'd gotten on the show, I was sort of overly confident because I was trying to compensate for the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I'll be straight and honest, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, they threw me into a show that I'm working with people that, I knew since I was a child, and I mean, who doesn't know Luke and Laura? And
right.
I was thrown in the ringer with Stephen Nichols and Mary Beth Evans and Tony Geary and Jeannie Francis, and I mean, I was thrown in with the veterans. And my first day, I remember my first day on General Hosptial, and I've always said this over and over again, was I had about 100 pages that I had to do. On top of that, I had 2 love montages with Mary Beth Evans. I mean, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and so I just tried to compensate it with my confidence and trying to pretend something that I didn't know. But it took me a good 6 months to kind of really start to feel comfortable. I remember Tony Geary gave me the best advice. He pulled me aside one day and he says, "I want to give you one piece of advice. Just listen." That's all he said to me. And
oh, wow.
I don't know what it was, but there was a moment in a scene with him actually that it just clicked. It just absolutely clicked. And all of a sudden I felt that whole switch within, my preparation. I felt the whole switch within my own character development and where I wanted to go with this character, even though I knew, where they were taking me. But it gave me enough confidence on the other side of what I was doing to be able to say, okay, I can be more vulnerable and I can put myself out there as an actor more, and I don't have to rely on an ability that I didn't think I had. I can now rely on the ability that I kind of feel I do have now, and it gave me a lot of confidence. And it to be honest with you, Tony, it's helped me. I've held that with me now, 12 years later. So,
that's funny. You just answered one of my questions. I was going to ask you what you took away from being on a soap that you still use now, and there it is.
Well, I mean, to be honest, there's way more than that I took with me.
Right.
That was, when it comes to the craft in itself, I look at acting as like playing tennis. Tennis, you hit a ball back and forth. And when you're having a conversation with someone, you're doing the same thing. And so, you listen, you respond, you respond, they listen, and so forth. You're playing tennis back and forth. And so, granted, I like to talk a lot, as you can tell, so you guys aren't getting much of a chance to play tennis, but that's all acting is. I mean, if you, and then you throw them into the mix, and I relate to what I see on paper. And when you can relate to whatever you're reading, then you can act. It's just a matter of having a conversation. And so those were things that I started to learn and I started to develop within myself, and then I started to create my own sort of method, and so on.